Hello, good morning. Con here. I am finally almost ready to share with you my top 5 poems. Now, the poetry collab is the brainchild of EJ from Kafoople Classroom, and my top 5 poems are... I need a drum roll. So my first poem, number 5, is Matilda Who Told Such Dreadful Lies, and it's by Hilaire Belloc. And I remember learning this at school, and I learned it off by heart, and it's just one of those, it falls into the category of, is it, light, it's like the nonsensical light verse, blah, blah, blah. I'm gonna have to get rid of that. Anyway, Matilda Who Told Such Dreadful Lies and Made One Gasp and Stretch One's Eyes. It's got the most beautiful descriptions in there and adjectives, and you get a sense of this child who is just really very naughty. So it's very relatable, it's easy to teach, and I've got it excuse me, in the link below. That is my number 5 poem. Just one second. So, the poet Hilaire Belloc was a 20th, let me get my centuries right. He was French, but spent most of his life in England. He's best known for his satirical poems, and Matilda Who Told Such Terrible Lies is found in the Bad Child's Book of Beasts in his 1896 collection. Now there is such a building of tension throughout this poem as you reach the denouement of the poem, and it's just, you just feel the emotion and the outrage and the excitement of everything that's happening in this poem. And with the exaggeration he's used, it's just a fabulous poem that's just as relevant in the 21st century as it was 100 years ago when it was first published. I hope you love it as much as I do. Okay, number 4. Number 4 is The Highwayman by Alfred Noyes. Now, Alfred Noyes was also English, and he composed this in 1914. And, you know, it is one of those poems that I remember from English, learning, you know, English classes myself, and I loved it. You know, there's this beautiful narrative. It's a narrative form. Noyes was influenced by the two great romantic poets, Wordsworth and Tennyson, so it's got these overtones of deep passion and love and beautiful techniques in it. So it's set in the 18th century under King George. Let me check. Now, for those of you who are unfamiliar with a highwayman was like a robber. So there's a lot of vocab in this poem that you do need to cover, and also the historical context for why robbers existed, what the countryside of England was like, and the political climate as well. So that helps you embrace the sacrifice of this love poem that's just so tragic. The overall plot of the story is that the stable boy named Tim betrays Bess, the innkeeper's daughter, and so the idea is that love is a sacrifice, and it's just so gorgeous because you can remember this. It's just the highwayman came riding, the highwayman came riding all through the night. And you see the tension builds in here as well, because he's so busy robbing everyone and giving to the poor, I imagine, that he only has time for a kiss. And he says to Bess, watch for me by moonlight, I think is the line. Let me get it. The highwayman is unnamed, so he's this elusive figure in the poem, but you can tell that his heart belongs to Bess, and Bess's heart belongs to him, which is why it's so moving. So let me get some lines for you so that you can be swept away by this as well. The wind was a torrent of darkness among the gusty trees. The moon was a ghostly galleon tossed upon cloudy seas. The road was a ribbon of moonlight over the purple moor, and the highwayman came riding. Wait. Yes, no, I got it right. And the highwayman came riding, riding, riding. The highwayman came riding. Can't remember the rest. Up to the old inn door. Let me do that again. Okay, I've adjusted my lighting to create some ambience. All right, so this is The Highwayman by Alfred Noyes. The wind was a torrent of darkness among the gusty trees. The moon was a ghostly galleon tossed upon cloudy seas. The road was a ribbon of moonlight over the purple moor, and the highwayman came riding, riding. The highwayman came riding up to the old inn door. And then the second and third and the rest of the poem paint these magnificent images of the highwayman, what he wears, the characters in this text, and it's just gorgeous. So I hope you like it. That's my number 4. Okay, now this is my third poem. It is Waltzing Matilda, and it's by Banjo Patterson, who was one of Australia's prolific writers in the 19th century, and he composed this in 1895, and it was put to music to a Scottish song. I think the following year. It's a ballad, and it's about a swagman. Now, in Australia, a swagman is someone who is considered an itinerant worker, and they were all over Australia, particularly through the 1840s and 50s, after the gold rushes and during the interwar period. Let me get that right. When shearing and huge cattle stations is, where a lot of men worked, and a swag man carried a swag or something, all of his belongings in a blanket, and it was rolled up, and so that was called a swag. The labourer in this poem is a sheep shearer, so hence the name Waltzing Matilda. Let me just read you the first few lines. Once a jolly swagman camped by Billabong under the shade of a coolabah tree, and he sang as he watched and waited till his billy boiled. Who'll come a waltzing Matilda with me? Waltzing Matilda, who'll come a waltzing Matilda with me? And he sang as he watched and he waited till his billy boiled. Who'll come a waltzing Matilda with me? Now the poem continues about an incident that happens to the swagman, and there's a lot of vocab in here that is particularly Australian. So we've got a swagman, a billabong. A billabong is a water hole that's formed from a river system, and the Aboriginal word means dead water. So it wasn't flowing. A billy or a billy can, you might still know what that term is. It's a tin can that's used to, it's got a wire handle, and it's used to cook your food in. Coolabah is a kind of gum tree, and it's usually found inland along the rivers in Australia. Now, a jumbuck, you might not ever have heard that term before. It's a sheep. And a tucker bag, a bag in which the swagman carries his food, and a squatter, as you read through the poem, a squatter is a landholder, and squatters were the people that could kick you off land, or they could hire you if they needed labourers. So A.B. or Banjo Patterson composed this, and it's Australian kids grow up singing this song, and it's a ballad, but Australian kids grow up listening, knowing this song, and it's a really beautiful poem to explore and analyse with them, and it's easy because they can relate to it. Alright, that's my number 3. Banjo Patterson composed this poem with a very easy cadence, and even the beginning of the poem opens with a once upon a time kind of introduction, so that the reader or the listener is immediately cued for an unravelling or an unfolding of a narrative. There's also end rhyme in the even lines of this poem, so they end with a long E, and the use of alliteration throughout this poem really lends itself to the form of the ballad, and it helps the reader or listener experience the story of the poem. Alright, number 2 poem is Dream Within a Dream by Edgar Allan Poe. Now, you may all be familiar with Edgar Allan Poe, King of the Macabre. Now, A Dream Within a Dream is just a 2-stanza poem, and it's Poe questioning the existence of reality and whether or not we can actually exist beyond the realms of the here and now. Does that make sense? Anyway, by the end of the poem, the narrator is no closer to answering his question than we are by the end of it. So really, is there a series of realities that we're a part of, a human dream within a divine dream? It's a very, very thought-provoking poem to study. Okay, my number 1 poem, my all-time favourite poem in the whole wide world, well, it has been for a number of years, is Elizabeth Barrett Browning's Sonnet 43. And it's the most wonderful love poem, I think. And in it she expresses how much she completely and utterly adores and loves her husband, Robert Browning. And so intense does she feel this emotion for him that she says that she will love him beyond death. And I think that is the ultimate in romantic love. So let me just give you some details about this poem. So early in my teaching career, I discovered that I love sonnets, and there are 2 types. There's the Shakespearean or the English sonnet, and there's the Italian or Petrarchan sonnet. Both forms have 14 lines, with the difference being the couplet ending for an English sonnet and the sestet octet feature in the Italian. So it follows all this poem follows all the structure of the Italian rhyme scheme. Okay, so Sonnet 43 by Elizabeth Barrett Browning is probably the most well-known sonnet. In fact, most people think that Shakespeare wrote it, but he didn't. She composed it in 1850, so it's a very, very old, very beautiful sonnet. Hello, good morning, Con here. I think that was the longest time I've ever taken to edit a video, and I've done a few in the last 6 months, but I wanted to thank everyone for their amazing videos, so informative and so funny, and thanks to Kafoople for this great idea and including me. I am Con Vicissitude, and I hope you enjoy my poetry video. Thanks for watching. Con out.